Assalamualaikum,
Waalaikumsalam. Oh, on.
Dr. Lilis. Tak apalah, saya boleh sebut je kot. Terus saya sebut.
Okay, okay, yeah.
Baik,
Silakan.
pertama Dr. Nazri, thank you so much. I think I've learned a lot from your inputs. First and foremost, other than the report that you mentioned that needs to be in Bahasa, how about the research proposal at the initial stage? Should it be forwarded in Bahasa as well? I really appreciate your kind advice on this. Secondly, you mentioned that some of the proposals or the policy will be endorsed by different committee or different levels. The question is, will the effect of the implementation of this policy be different when it's been endorsed at the different committee or levels? Thank you.
Yeah. The first question, whether it is in Bahasa or any, probably it's not Bahasa, then it could be in English. What I understand, normally it will first come in English. Then the output translated into Bahasa. Unless the what you call the secretariat at the ministry has or allow the first proposal to be in Bahasa. But what I understand, what I have been involved, is come in English first, and then the report will, at the end of the day, where you have the report will be in English and translated into Bahasa. On the second question, the effect of the committee, different committee has different level of authorizations. So if, let's say, it is an internal, you mean if you are referring to the two committees in the research and proposal, this is the two committee, the technical committee and the what you call that tadi, I tengok yang slide tadi. The two committees tu, the research fund technical committee, research fund steering committee. Research fund technical committee and steering committee are two different committee. The technical committee look at the proposal, the research proposal, the technical aspect of the research, the component, the number of researchers, the members, as well as the technical aspect. Whereas the steering committee look at the progress of the research, whether it fulfills the set of TOR that has been agreed upon by both researcher as well as the the ministry. I hope I had answered the questions.
Dr. Nazri, thank you. But I think the second question tu ada silap faham sikit. Actually, I was referring to I think the approval of the approval of the policy paper tu.
Okay.
I think in one of your slides, again, you mentioned that. Thank you.
Okay. The approval of the papers or policy depends on the level of policy. If it is a national policy, it goes to the cabinet. For example, new policy that require a cabinet approval will have to be endorsed by cabinet. And then spending the budget, whenever we require a certain fund, then they have to go to cabinet. And then legal matters also will require approval of cabinet. But if it is at the level of, for example, a ministry under the functions of the minister, then it is up to the ministry's minister or head of department, a KSU, or the head of department means Director General of Education. If it is an operational matters, which the scope of purview comes under the ministry or the department, then it ends at that level. If it is national, then it goes to the cabinet. Because in the cabinet paper, normally we require comments from central agency, treasury, legal, Jabatan Peguam Negara, JPA if it's a matter related to personnel, and EPU if it's the three important agency: Treasury, JPA, EPU. If it's related to legal, then we go for AGC, Attorney General. They have to give their review. If one of the ministry or one of the department rejected the proposal, the cabinet might request the ministry that take up the matter to further discuss with the relevant authority so that they can agree. If not, then it will be very difficult for us to pursue and get the endorsement of cabinet. Yeah. And then if it is, for example, another example, if the proposal require the interministerial collaboration, then the cabinet may decide a special cabinet committee. A special cabinet committee will have a bigger power than the committee under a ministry. So a special cabinet committee will consist of ministers of different ministries in the committee, and the chairman, normally the prime minister or deputy prime minister, looking at the scope and also the interest of the subject matter that being approved or endorsed. Thank you. I hope I answered your question. Okay, yeah.
Okay, thanks for your sharing. And thanks for the and actually, I really prepare a policy paper as one of the KPI or one of the output for our LMTS grant. So, I we have no experience in preparing this kind of policy paper before. So I have three questions. So the first one is is the policy paper requested by the MOE under the LMTS similar to what we have presented just now? Okay. Then the second question is, can you please further elaborate on the format of the policy papers? Like, for example, is it like a thesis or a report with infographic presentations, or it's like a journal articles? Okay, with the format. And the third one is like which platform, or is there any other platform that we should publish these policy papers, like journals or any magazine, or we must directly send these policy papers to the relevant departments or agencies? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. LRGS is long-term research grant that is under JPT. Oh, MOE. That is a policy. Satu lagi tu yang dekat Rahar tu is FRGS, Fundamental Research. Yeah. I just want to, because I left the Ministry of Finance. There are two different funds. There is LRGS and the FRGS. Fundamental Research is with the department, and LRGS with the ministry. So LRGS, the one that I mentioned earlier, they have a long list, or a few pages more explaining about the procedure. I'm not sure whether it is available in the website. I'm not sure that the one that I got there. But it described the process one by one, the breakdown and submission, the type, the TOR, the number of people. For example, I think it's 5 people, including the head or the leader, the research team. And they would like to see if you have members from outside the university, not only within the university. You have people from UPM, USM, or UM, as well as you have the international consultant if it is required, the international review. I didn't write in detail about that one. At first, I have everything, but I cut it short because I don't want to discuss about the paper. It is the process that they put up by the ministry for the when they request for a proposal. Normally, they set the guideline for people who are been identified to come up with the proposal. Request for proposal, that means they identify 6 institutions, for example, UScience Holding or UM or UKM, UPM. Prof. Hoshidi.
The requirement, the let's say it's already been approved.
Okay.
Yeah. And then what the requirement is, they have to prepare a policy.
Yeah.
They already given
The grant already endorsed.
what the requirement is, they have to prepare the policy paper. So, in order to prepare the policy paper, what are the factors that need to be in the policy? You have mentioned some the items.
Yeah.
I mean, once they have done the study and then they have the findings, based on your criteria, this must be the principle of the patient, there must be not incorporating the policies. Do they have to do that, or that is the responsibility of the registry to look at the like your policy, to look at other responsibilities?
Yeah, yeah.
Because they will not be in a position to look at the implication of their findings on other microeconomic policy or other micro policy.
Yeah.
Is there their responsibility or is it the responsibility of the ministry to look at?
Yeah. There will be several sessions of engagement between the researcher and the ministry officials. That means there's two committees. There's now the technical committee as well as the task force. Nama ni tadi? Two committees, yeah. Jadi the committee will guide the researcher on the progress of the report. For example, if you are doing research on education, then you might need to get or collect data on the target group that you are researching on. If, let's say, for example, P40 group, that means you have to identify which region, and then you have to collect the data from the students that are categorized as the P40 group. Then you can come up with the finding from based on that data. And then the steering committee sometimes will guide you, say, the focus of your data are only from Peninsula Malaysia. What about the data from Sabah and Sarawak? So that means to balance the, data tabulation, you have to go and search for data from Sabah and Sarawak as well, the P40 group on that side. So from that result, you come up with your analysis. There's a special chapter on the analysis of the finding. So from that analysis, you come up with the short or what we call detailed recommendations. What are the best options for you to solve the issues that being identified? For example, if we touch on income, it touch on health, it touch on social needs, whatever, you put an outline. But in the initial approval, there are problem statement that you have to answer. Why does the research required? So if the research meant to come up with a policy, for example, introduce a scheme of helping the B40 group, so your research too should cater or capture that element and help the ministry to craft the possible action in addressing the issue. If you have a good data but you cannot conclude what are the recommendations, then there's a hiccup or the gaps in the analysis and the recommendation. So the steering committee will further request another round of what you call data collection. If that say you has identified through the process that it is, if you have another ground, you still have that same finding, then they will go through and you might suggest what are the areas that should be the focus by the ministry. You suggest other actions that are required based on the finding. Maybe the ministry did not in the beginning feel that it is important, but your finding can, further influence the ministry to look at that aspect. Because research will help the policymaker to come up with the policy statement that address issues. But sometimes policymakers, they have what you call an imagination. There are issues based on their reading, based on their discussion. For example, an officer go to EPU, and EPU or Economic Planning Unit in Prime Minister's Department mentions that education should look into this B40 group in the university and help them. So you report back to the ministry, the officer report back to the ministry and take it to the KSU. KSU will bring it in the HOD meeting, and HOD meeting conclude that we should have a research on the B40 group at the university. Why? Ask the officer. The officer says that EPU feels that a special program should be designed to cater the needs of the B40 group. So they come up with the policy or what you call a problem statement that the ministry feels, because sometimes ministry have to engage with the EPU. EPU have so many ministries, they are not dealing with one ministry. And then we go to the RMK and go through the report, where are the suitable statement that need to be addressed. Then we compile and said that from the RMK, the policy issues. So we look into things that address the B40 group. We outline there are issues identified in the RMK 12 touch on B40 group. So we go through that. And then we propose to the ministry, these are issues mentioned in RMK 12 about B40 group. So we have to address these issues, and at the end of our research, we will come up with a proposal, action plan on how to address issue 1, 2, 3, 4, issue, health issue, or finance issue, or social issues, and IIT, whatever issues that are being outlined in the RMK 12. So from there, the ministry will prioritize what are the issues that require further detail. And when you conduct your research, you will address all the issues that has been outlined, and you answer one by one and present it to the ministry. The research, the steering committee. The steering committee will see whether from that output we can come up with a policy. Sometimes there are what you call lack of information in research, that when we want to craft a policy, we must be sure that the minister can convince the cabinet that a certain action plan need to be introduced, and then that recommendation will go to EPU, go to Treasury, go to other agencies, and they will give their views. Sometimes they come back with different questions, so this is where the gap need to be improved, further improved. So let's say the steering committee is the committee where they will discuss about the progress of your research and making sure that the research meets the intended policy statement, and as well as address the problem statement that where the issue were raised at the beginning of the research. Ada tiga tadi, three.
There should be a constant engagement
Yeah.
between the researcher and the steering committee.
No, yes, normally steering committee will call for presentation, and one meeting 3 or 4 researchers research will be called to do their research. But the people or the secretariat of the research will engage the researcher. Yeah.
But they will
They will make sure. Yeah, alignment and realignment. Sometimes the important thing is that at the end of the product, at the end of the research, it is useful for the ministry to go through and come up with because it's not fair for the officers at the ministry to appoint another group to relook at the same problem. That's why time is an essence. If it's given you 3 to 6, probably extended 9, probably extended 1 year, just for you to get the detail. But to be what you call good research output will require a detailed study. For example, the one that I mentioned about the data collection, sometimes data is not in the ministry, not in the open research, but are available in the other ministries. For example, about youth. Youth have conduct so many, and the number of research they are available in the ministry. You have to request assistance of the ministry officers to write to the Ministry of Youth and Sport for them to allow you to get some of the research that they have conducted earlier. And also have to go through all this detailed, network with other ministries if the matter are within the purview of that ministry. And about the publication, that one you have to, at the end of the process where already have been completed and no more research, you have to request a special approval for them to allow you to publish. They will consider based on the nature of that research. Sometimes they prefer to keep it as the, working material rather than research output. Working material mean material for them to go through in drafting the policy, but not end product of a research. That research belong to the ministry. Yeah.
Can I
Yeah, Dr. Guan, sila.
just like to add to what Dr. Nasri had mentioned, details of research. Actually, for basic understanding of examination and research, there are two types of research that is being given up by Ministry of Higher Education. Basically, one is from the JPT side, the Development and Higher Education Department, where they do the applied research, prototype research, methodological research, as well as MRPS. For that matter, those research topics of all this policy what is being submitted by the researcher or academician, normally you see through the development and for them to consider. But for fundamental research on this seminar is actually from the Ministry of Higher Education. That is the second part of the Ministry of Education allocated some fund for basic fundamental research and policy, especially issues that they raised during the department meeting. So that itself is invited. We invite professors, lecturers, academician, researchers, all these things by reading at least invite at least 3 or 4 groups. Then that reading is made known to all the potential professors. But then I give you a tip. I give you some tips how you have to make known yourself to the ministry officer, to the policymaker in the ministry that you are an expert in certain field of area. Maybe you should register your name with IPPTN. Right? So IPPTN have a directory where if you are specialized in childhood education, you get your name there. If there is any policy that involves childhood education, you will call to form a team there or email. Make yourself known to the ministry so that when there is a project, a policy paper we develop, you will be identified as a potential leader and researcher. That is from top down, group on, let's say. So there is certain grant that is coming. Another tip here, close the gap of how your policy paper that is accepted. Perhaps you want to base it on the NPOS, national promotion strategy criteria. It should be easy to implement the policy proposal. Then the second criteria will be high impact. Whatever your policies being developed, it should be high impact on the community, on the stakeholders, on the institution that you're working with. The third one will be sustainable, right? And then fourth one will be low cost. Anything low cost, your chances are more likely your proposal to be accepted. Another thing is, of course, before you submit a proposal, you might do a simple research first, survey first.
Yeah, preliminary research.
Let's say, what are the reasons, issues that recently arise in Ministry of Education? For example, teachers are retiring very early in their 50s. When they have 20 years of experience, we don't want teachers to resign. 50 years old, they have 10 more good years and they are so experienced. We don't want to push this good, knowledgeable teachers. So, that is a topic to what we call it, policy study, right? So, something that you can feel that
Yeah, visibility lah.
visibility.
Yeah. Maybe you can write in a newspaper or journal. Yeah. Another question.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Prof, thank you for your lecture, very thorough. When I see that when one policy they are disclosed to public, so many part of process and it is process. But recently, I think that over years back, we saw that many people policy. For example, teaching Yahweh to particular school. This is one. Recently, punishment for people who always a bahasa for government business. And recently also, regarding the wearing the mask without fearing. I think they go to this kind of a step where they want to launch this policy. Because in this policy, there is also implication. Implication for conflict, economic, social. What is happening now?
Yeah, thank you. Earlier, when I mentioned about the policy for students wearing black shoes, it was made as part of press statement by a minister. That's why I said earlier whether good policy comes from mere statement. Just during the press conference, mentions about the bahasa Melayu should become the international language. But recently they have a session organized by Majlis Professor Negara, calling all the experts in Bahasa Melayu to discuss about importance. But there is not, for me, there is not a process in formulating policy. There is a session engaging the public about the interests of the government to use Bahasa Melayu in the international forum. Good policy, as I said earlier, need a lot of or detailed study, engaging public before it is announced, so that the policy thorough, looking at the element of strong and weaknesses, whether the reaction of the public are accepted or negative implication arises out of the policy statement. That's why we have to differentiate between clearly drafted policy and a spark of statement by leaders announcing a policy. So there are two different category of policy, because a statement made by a minister saying that, for example, as you has mentioned about tata tertib tadi, KSN, bahasa Melayu, ya bahasa Melayu di kalangan pegawai. To me, that is not. I'm not sure whether they have conducted detailed study about that. But bahasa Melayu has always been issues, or not, has always been practiced as a means in communications for government officers. Even though they write to private companies, they write in Malay. Only the response that come back in English, so it's not an issue. But I'm not going to. I'm not able to respond why and how, because that is a political statement, a policy that mentioned by a politician as according to the needs of the day and during his response to the questions by the press or whatever. I'm here merely looking at the proper policy adopted or approved by the ministry, and in the machinery that is, or the steps are in the government at the present. Okay, ada lagi? Any more? Ya, ini tidak ini. Ya, share.
Thank you very much for the insightful presentation. I really confused whether my person or the director was speaking up for you, but I think still follow up understanding. Typically, policy makers consist of the civil servants who have the expertise, the data, the platform for communication. But in the process of making policy, there tends to be conflict between the views of the civil servant and the political class. Now, how often do you reconcile with this conflict, especially politicians have political interests, they have political goals, political institutions, while the civil servants are only implicit in terms of information that we have society.
Yeah.
And then you made mention of the side effect or unforeseen effect of public policy. And there are forums where it's there is this public policies between different maybe parliamentary related ministries or agencies. When these side effects are linked to
The second one is about the interministerial policy. I mean, yeah. The first one is about the conflict. As an officer, normally we advise the government. That's why we have a special paragraph on implications, all the political implication, economic implication, social implication. So we, in the presentation to the minister, if we introduce this new policy, these are the implications that we have to handle or take care of. If, let's say, the implications are so severe to the government, then we have to engage with the special, what you call, other ministries that are relevant. And then the minister will take it up at their level of discussion. If, let's say, the minister feels that he is ready with, or he agree, or he decides to pursue the decision, that means it is the what you call his things. The things that he decides politically might not be at our level to interpret. He has his perspective or overview where he's capable of handling the matter. As a government officer, we rationally advise on legal matters, financial matters, political implications, social matters, that for him to consider. And the final decision still rests with the minister. If he say that he wants to pursue, then we just provide all the information, making sure that the policy are good to be implemented, good in action plan, good in the what you call a schedule of implementation, what level, certain level, district or region or whatever, so that it is phased out according to the need of the minister. And on the inter-ministry, this is where the committees will normally, cabinet will decide if it cut across a different ministry, a special committee chaired by number one, the Prime Minister or the Deputy Prime Minister, where the members are consisting of different ministers of different ministry that are interested in the subject, or a cabinet or the cabinet meeting can appoint the minister would that propose the program, and the members should also or the joint committee between two ministries. They have a decision which, for example, a committee set for Ministry of Higher Education and Ministry of Science, for example, if it is on research, because Ministry of Science, they are also using lecturers in their research, and MOHE also have the authority. So they have a two minister jointly chair a committee that will decide to address the issues concerned. Or a minister can, with the endorsement of a cabinet, chair a session to form a committee that consists of different ministry, and the minister has to report back to cabinet on the progress of all the implementations or actions taken by the committee. So we have different, depends on the issues. Yeah, depend on the issues. Yeah.
Next question from Dr. Muftahu.
Oh, Muftahu. I know. Ada situ. Last. Oh, last bawa pengarah.
After listening to all the question answers, I just want to know about the lawsuit procedures. How long does it take in general to be endorsed following the normal process?
Oh, okay. It depends on the issues. If the issues are urgent, need to be handled immediately, for example, banjir, or for example, COVID, that probably by week or few weeks or days. But if it's a proper planning, for example, addressing the issue of science and technology, addressing the fundamental research, establishing a new institute for whatever nano or whatever, then it might take a longer time. It depends on the urgency of the issues, if it is require detail and further research, benchmarking. Sometimes and when we want to introduce new policy, the government say that we have to benchmark with the institution overseas, so the team will go and look at that practices over there, and then they will put up in the recommendation. If it is urgent matters, then just depends. Probably 6 months to 1 year are reasonable. Yeah.
Assalamualaikum.
Sekejap. Mana soalan dalam?
Last.
Ni from okay, aja.
Is there any standard SOP for that or how practice I remember.
Yeah.
What is the SOP?
Yes.
Secondly, is there any group of approach an exploration like I have done by research and funded by the ministry or funded by policy committee that I want to consider to find the policy aims? Who should I approach?
Oh,
Push like
funding, you mean? Yeah.
let's say I can get such a line. It's not condensed, city or some content or
Yeah.
mainly for policy. But I have some policy elements. So push like my mind is for policy.
Okay. For the first part, I'm not sure about the format for request for proposal. I'm not sure whether Dr. Guan, through your experience, you have any standard other. You can answer because he's
You
no, I mean he was involved in the committee.
So the format would be, if you're actually developing a policy, at least you have a background to go and I follow the format of my NJM. What is the purpose of your policy? That's the most important. The
Tujuan lah.
key objective. And then you give the background information as social. Follow up the background information. Why is it important? What historical chronology or historical development of how these policies come about recognition. And also, then you have another diagram of what's the implication if you don't implement such policy. And you got some negative effect or this is very important. And then this is so important that if you don't do this and that, you in the end you will face this type of maybe another issue for them to some. So, and then another important is of course the financial implication of it. Of course, whenever you have trying to do suggest a reform or a policy statement, of course there are some financial implications. So, like what I say, we should be trying to aim for low cost, high impact type of policies so that an acceptable rate will be very effective. Yeah. So this is then we come with the conclusion how yeah. But once the policy has been approved, there will be a next step. There will be a plan how to go about implementing it. That's why the Malaysia Education Blueprint are all macro policy statements. But to do that, they need to set up a different organization entity like PAHU, what we call it, performance and delivery in the movie. They are the one who take charge of the implementation and monitoring of the same like Ministry of Education, this PMO of this. So this is how it goes. Thank you.
Yeah, another aspect is the methodology, where you want how you're going to conduct that research, and some literature review earlier. Let's say if what you are going to research on have some element being practiced in another country, so probably that one will help the committee to understand where we are missing or gaps that we need to introduce. And the methodology will tentative or describe the amount of money that they want to approve. If you need to conduct data collection, if you need to go overseas, if you want to employ or engage experts from overseas, then it will determine the amount of funds that are going to be approved for that research. Sometimes research requires international benchmarking. When you want to discuss about national issues, then probably engaging international benchmarking with macam buat MQA lah, while you set MQA quality, so you have to go to Australia, AQA, you have to go to UK for UK punya quality, New Zealand quality. So you have to visit them and get more information. But if you want to do research internally in Malaysia, probably you don't have to travel, but you have to do literary research lah, baca, reading journals as well. Okay, tak ada lagi?
Ada Dr. Ahmad.
Ya, saya. Siapa ni?
Boleh tak Dr. Lilis lagi online? Boleh tak saya tanya dua soalan? Satu pasal research proposal. Quickly, you mentioned about methodology. That is where this question goes to. Is there any explicit, specific activities in the methodology that needs to be, very obvious when you are proposing a a proposal for policy matters. Because you mentioned about some of the activities kan, you kata um, it's only public hearing. It's not really consulting, you know. So is there any specific activities? Kedua is about lobbying for policy change, but bottom up,
Ada.
not. Thank you. Any strategy? Thank you.
Okey, Dr. Guan. Ini saya minta Dr. Guan sebab dia ada pengalaman dalam pengurusan dan okay. Is this serious? Okay, Dr. Guan will come. Probably because they want to. No, they cannot see you. They are online. Nanti Dr. Guan will respond to the question. Thank you. Next question.
Okay, I try my best to answer your good questions actually. To do policy research, really intensive consultation with the stakeholders, including benchmarking visit like what Dr. Nasri had mentioned. So before that, during the establishment of our Ministry of Higher Education, the ministry actually come out with the PSPTN, Plan Strategic Pendidikan Tinggi. So that was a committee that headed by Dr. Wan Zahid. He's a former DG. So to cut the story short, we had a few thousands of town hall sessions, oral discussion among the expert group, and then benchmarking visit to almost all corners of the world. Actually, some went to the US, some Australia, some go to Japan, all over. So in order to get the consensus for everyone is getting the, like I say, stakeholders buy-in. That's how PSPTN. But when the ministry merged together, the Ministry of Education has really got their Malaysia Education Blueprint 2013, 15. So to get in line with it, we create another Malaysia Education Blueprint for higher education, so that there's an alignment between the education system between the primary, secondary, as well as tertiary education. This is the gist of it. Do I answer the question? For bottom-up proposal, that will be under the charge of higher education department. It's not under the Ministry of Higher Education, not the ministry level, because bottom-up is what you are proposing it to the higher education department, and normally the director general, if is thinks that it is highly viable and feasible for that policy change, he or she, say, will bring it up to the top management meeting under the chair by the Secretary General or even the Minister. And it is really a good recommendation. They will take it up. That's it. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Guan, and thank you, Dr. Nazri, for the very enlightening session. Sorry. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are almost at the end of our program, over the time. But before we leave, it is my pleasure to invite Dr. Muhammad Muftahu, Acting Director of IPPTN USM, to deliver the closing remarks. Please welcome.
The Honorary Professor of IPPTN, Emeritus Professor Datu Murshid Israt, distinguished speakers, Dr. Ahmad Nazir Suleiman, Dr. Mandi Onasayam, and Dr. Gaon N. Chan. And let me also recognize the presence of our CETEP Director, Associate Professor T.S. Dr. Wan Fatima Zuhrawan Mustafa. First and foremost, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the speakers for their valuable contribution to our seminar, Bridging the Gap, Preparing Policy Papers for Policymakers. My deepest gratitude to all the participants, of this seminar, those that have attended physically and those that attended virtually, to help this seminar become a successful event. Both speakers have shared five different perspectives. The first speaker has shared on the Malaysian context, what is happening with the ministry and the education system as a whole. And the second speaker have shared with us his experience in dealing with international partners at different contexts. And the last speaker has shared with us a lot of information on how to prepare policy papers and how to engage different stakeholders and different issues to take care of while preparing policy papers. To this end, I would like to close this remark by thanking the committee who worked on preparing this seminar, the IPPTN staff and other stakeholders of Inform. I want to thank you so much for your contribution for making this event smooth and a successful one. Thank you very much.